leaving with my panelists to respond to. So let me just quickly recapitulate here. The first point was the guide, what steps can be taken when a forum is coming up. Second is the knowledge gap. And third is the modalities of cooperation. Fourth is the nature of network. Do we go for open-ended network, or as I said, we go for a small nucleus so that coordination is easier and we start the work, and as and when various areas come up for our studies, we keep on expanding and bring in more actors for a comprehensive effort for bridging the knowledge gap that is there. Fifth is in terms of the institutional framework itself of the forum, what kind of institutional framework we should have. And last is in terms of what kind of activities we can undertake. So with these words, I would stop, and we have, as I said, some of the leading intellectuals of South Asia here on this panel. So I would start with Dada of all of us, Debopriya Bhattacharya. The distinguished fellow of CPD, and a powerful southern voice, powerful in all its manifestations. So Debuda, you have the floor.
A voice which can only work with an orchestra, huh? So, colleagues, Sachin, thank you very much. I was remembering Winston Churchill. I'm paraphrasing a bit, that he once said that it takes courage to get up and speak, but it takes more courage to sit and listen. So those who have really survived these 3 days and still sitting and listening, I want to give a big hand to them first. It's really great. And I also want to thank Nagesh and Sachin for really designing a fantastic event, because only now it is becoming clear to me how it has started and how it is ending. Maybe that design was not evident to me at the very beginning, and I was very, feel pressured that such a heavy-duty 3 days crowded conference with so much intense discussion, what will happen. But now I can see why it was designed in certain way. And this penultimate session will possibly express that in the most vivid circumstances. So basically what has happened in the last 3 days, that we were dealing with 3 domains. The first domain was, of course, the SDGs. The second domain was the South Asia. And the third domain was the role of think tanks. I think in this particular session, that triangulation is getting complete. That we have established that the SDG agenda is one of the most ambitious, powerful, transformative agenda which the humankind have ever thought of. And definitely a few present here, including Ambassador Acharya, have contributed to that. Many of us as outsider, insider have been involved. The issue is that this is there, and it is an asset for us. The second issue was that we also explored that this asset has a lot of real value for South Asia. That South Asia can recognize itself in this agenda and can see the relevance of it for their own people and population, particularly those who are left behind. And we have also analyzed the scene within which this SDG is to be implemented, particularly given the paralysis of the current state of affairs in the SAARC, that we have rediscovered or revisited the role of the think tanks in this regard to take the agenda forward and to be with our government also to implement as they implement them in the country. So I see this triangulation taking place. Now, if that be the case, I had a PowerPoint, incidentally, again. You go through the conference and it becomes irrelevant. But which is relevant over here was in my presentation was the analysis we did on a SWOT analysis of the think tanks in South Asia, in particular, what are their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. I would not bore you on that because most of you know that, and it is based on a Google review on how it has come through. But one of the issues which comes out from the SWOT analysis is very clear, is that the think tanks in South Asia are well placed to engage with SDGs, given its MDG experience and thereafter, and their linkages with the policy, policy community. But at the same time, the weaknesses are also often evident that they do not really produce the high quality. The quality assurance becomes an issue. They may not have really concrete, real solutions for certain things. And the threats are there that sometimes the spaces are squeezing in certain countries, and how do they really engage with the government and other stakeholders. But at the same time, there are a lot of opportunities where SDG has opened up in certain ways. So if you do a SWOT analysis, then you will see that how it is, this triangulation, how relevant it is in these certain circumstances. Now, yesterday, when I talked about these things in yesterday afternoon, that one issue was quite evident, that there is a niche to be filled up now given the situation. And that niche for the think tanks in South Asia is beckoning, it is calling, and South Asia's think tank community needs to respond to that. I think this is an historical moment where we need to respond to in the SDG context and in the South Asia context over there. So what would be the prime objective of that? I think the prime objective, you pick any verb, either promoting or accelerating implementation of the SDG agenda in South Asia. That is the simple one. And I would have it with an leave no one behind perspective. That would be giving us a bit of a, social content into this particular thing. Yesterday I mentioned, and let me reiterate in certain things, if that is why we need to fill up that particular issue, the rationale, motivation. But then how? I see definitely the 4 hows over here. The first which came through from these 3 days is the exchange of experience. I think Abid concluded his Brazil, India, Bangladesh agriculture experience. He first looked around and saw there are no Brazilians around, so he went ahead with that. I noticed that. So, but he had been pretty correct, what he is said. So, experience exchanges had been one of the important issue which is there. I think the second one is, of course, data access. The data issue is a perennial issue for any researcher and also for the government, not only for the monitoring point of view, but also designing point of view over there. So we see a lot of issues over there. And yesterday's data session was really revealing when we heard yesterday in the afternoon over there. The third one is policy dialogue. I think beyond experience of concrete experiments or models or pilots, I think the issue of policy dialogues is an important one, particularly when we come to the outputs. We will see that how policy dialogues is there. We are sitting in one. And the fourth one is analytical research. Analytical research to shed new lights on the new challenges which comes through while implementing the SDGs in the country. One can prolong this one, but I always have found that too many objectives are quite intimidating. So I settled on this 4, but you may have other thoughts on that. Now, what we would like to do, I think the first and foremost thing which one would like to do for a regional configuration is that reinterpret SDGs from the South Asian perspective. I think some of the issues were coming up that I mentioned yesterday. There are only 3 goals and 2 MOIs which refer to a region. But definitely, if you take a closer look, you will find there are many other goals, targets, and indicators which cannot be addressed without taking a regional perspective. I think the first and the foremost task for us would be reinterpreting SDGs from the South Asian perspective. That would be a very technical, goal-based and target-based approach to look at it. And it may be from region. It also have a sub-regional dimension too. It doesn't mean that it has to be, everything has to be region. It can be also sub-regional in certain ways. The second one which will go on for us is that the data mapping and use of non-official data within an integrity framework in certain ways. So data mapping, how the countries are really overcoming the data gaps and how the experiences over there is definitely demands special focus as we move on that. And definitely it is a certain category of the researchers which can do that. The third one is, of course, can we really identify a set of South Asian priorities? It is about the South Asian priorities. You know, the SAARC Secretariat 4 years back was given the task of contextualizing, and it is not yet there, and they couldn't really meet. So whether we can fulfill that deficit at this moment, and as and when SAARC expert group meeting starts functioning, they can also build on that if necessary. So it's not substituting. So taking forward the regional priorities. I think there is another interesting work to be done is that how the leave no one behind approach is being operationalized in respective countries. That what exactly they mean in India, the left behind people. Or what it is, are they the same people in Bangladesh? Are they the same people in Nepal? We have done in Bangladesh an interesting study, in fact supported by UNDP, that who are not to be left behind. So it is an interesting experience for us to explore who are being left behind in different countries as we move. And the final point is that is to keep, which SCAP partly does, but I think we can do also add some value to that, looking at the regional trends in implementing SDGs. Regional trends, whether any structural breaks or any special, coming into operation, what are the experience on that, that can be also very much looked into. Let me come to the concluding part, is that when do we do that? I think this occasion, this meeting in Delhi has come in a very opportune time, because this is the month of October, early. So we are moving towards the summit in 2019. If we can really bring out an output before that, in whatever area it may be, reinterpreting SDG from regional perspective itself will be a new contribution. Africans have trying to do that, but they couldn't come out because of various diversities issues. ECLAC also tries that. But I think we can target the upcoming high-level summit in HLPF in 2019 and get these CIST things out of it. Now to conclude, how do you proceed? In the literature, if you see the forms of think tanks cooperation, this was in my PowerPoint, that there are three forms which we talk about. One is a network, another is a cooperation, and the third one is a partnership. The difference between network and cooperation is that cooperation is more organized than networks. Networks is more looser and more horizontally done. Partnerships is even more structured form of cooperation. I think it's always good to start with a network, and as you build trust and activity and etc., and then you move from network to cooperation to partnership. So I will see that one unfolding in the years as it comes. Resources and other things, that structure we need to go back from here with something concrete as we see. So the concrete thing is that possibly the initiative currently taken by Nagesh, and given as I was mentioning yesterday, the absence of intergovernmental organization can be partly filled up with the convening power of UN SCAP and particularly the Delhi office. And we can create a small nucleus for the time being with one institution from each of the regional partners, and see to take this one, the documentation, work program and other things forward, And we have a couple of meetings coming up in the future. Next month, we have one in Dhaka, where we are doing a South Asian SDG exercise at this moment. And then in Islamabad, the SDPI is coming up. We can take those one forward. My last point would be, which I have learned, is that we need a name for it. What do you call it in that way? And that had always been an issue, and with abbreviations, how it sounds. He thought of this nest. It's an interesting one. We have Southern Voice and Swati and many others on that. I just conclude by saying that these abbreviations can be very, very tricky. Once I was talking in the WTO negotiations with one gentleman, that was the Singapore issues coming up. I was discussing a lot of MIA, the Multilateral Investment Agreement. Only after half an hour I discovered he was talking about not multilateral investment agreement, he was talking about missing in action people. In the recent past, I was discussing in connection with the Rohingyas in Bangladesh with one colleague that about the IDP, about the internally displaced people. And it turned out he was thinking of international development partners. So I thought that the internally displaced people are